In most years, this would be the grandstand fixture of the IPL. In most years, it would possibly be two teams that are looking set for the playoffs and somehow just using these sorts of games to see who finishes where in the playoff spots. But this is a different year. This is 2020, and this sees Chennai Super Kings play the Mumbai Indians, starting at the bottom of the table. And Mumbai Indians, on the other hand, just looking to go in the right direction and secure what is not just a playoff spot, but a top two spot. The El Clasico, as it's traditionally referred to in the IPL, but in very different circumstances for both teams. It's match number 41 at Sharjah, and our attention is going to be at this game. And don't rule CHENNAI out just yet. The points table will tell you that they're still mathematically very much alive in it. Even if they lose today, they're still alive in it. Deepdas Gupta is here looking fresh and ready, and I like the intellectual look with the glasses that he seems to have picked up from God knows where. Ian Bishop will be dishing the glasses in about 5 hours from now as he brings in his 53rd birthday, and I hope it's a party that Deep is invited to. Bish, how are you doing? Plans for this evening?
All good, RK.
Yeah. Has he invited you to his birthday bash just yet?
Not as yet, but I'm expecting one sometime soon.
He doesn't have a choice now, and you can thank me for that later. But let's focus on the cricket, shall we? Let's focus on that. And the news is that Kieron Pollard has won the toss, and that itself is the first talking point we must get into. Rohit Sharma misses out. Pollard saying at the toss that it's because of a left hamstring strain that the Mumbai Indians captain suffered in that dramatic game against Punjab with the double super over. There is just the one change. We thought maybe they'll be tempted to bring in Chris Lynn and make another couple of changes, but Saurabh Tiwari, who started this season for the Mumbai Indians, is back, and we'll see who opens the batting in that case. So let's just get news on that. We were somewhat hearing this deep, and we thought Rohit Sharma might get a rest. Just thoughts on what Mumbai miss out on a Rohit Sharma at this stage of the season?
A lot. I mean, you miss out on a lot of things from Rohit. Obviously, Rohit, the batsman, Rohit, the leader. Even though Pollard comes in, who's again proved his worth as a leader over the years. And also there is this consistency in terms of the philosophy, because Pollard's been part of the setup for 7-8 years, it seems now. So obviously there won't be too much of a difference in terms of how they lead the side. But yes, I mean, you definitely will miss Rohit, the batsman, without a shadow. But I like the only change that they've made. So obviously Saurabh Tiwari comes in and he slips into that middle order. Ishan Kishan, who generally opens innings, goes into that opening slot, is what I think. And I'm glad that they did not make too many changes, because as you mentioned, someone like Chris Lynn coming in would make then you would be forced to make other changes in terms of getting another overseas player out, I guess. So yeah, I guess it's a good change.
Yeah, I'm going to spend a lot of time with Vish. I'm glad we've got Vish to discuss Kieron Pollard, the captain, on this, so we can take that theme. But before we get there, are you happy with the fact that they've just made that one change, bringing in Saurabh Tiwari, Vish? That we did consider whether they'd want to play Chris Lynn at the top and maybe replace an overseas seamer with an Indian seamer. Happy with that?
I won't complain about it. My one concern is the workload that a Trent Bolt, that a Jasprit Bumrah, who's a local player, would be going through. Nathan Coulter-Nile needs game time. Pattinson was there before. So I think once they've managed the workload of these guys as they head to the playoffs, whatever position they finish in, we trust they'll be in the playoffs, then it's fine. You get to find out a little bit more about Tiwari as well.
Yeah, all right. We're going to continue this conversation, but Mumbai are going to be batting second half. We'll also confirm Chennai's team news for you, and there are wholesale changes made, if you can call 3 changes wholesale changes, because MS Dhoni doesn't make many changes. He did indicate at the end of that previous game against Rajasthan Royals, where you felt that MS had almost said, we're going to now just give a few youngsters a go, almost resigning, or we're reading in between the lines, but resigning to the fact that this season's playoff spots are perhaps beyond them. So we do have a few changes. Ruturaj Gaikwad gets a game again. N. Jagadishan had just the one game. He comes in 2. And finally, Imran Tahir gets his first game of the season. Out go Kedar Jadhav, Piyush Chawla, and Shane Watson. So let's get thoughts on that first, Deep. Happy with that?
Yeah, we were looking into those kind of changes anyway, where post the last game and what he mentioned in the post game interview, MSD, and I'm glad the fact that Rituraj will be opening, it seems, in this lineup. Because Rituraj got a few games, but he was played out of position. He was batting at 4 or 5 in the middle order, but he's an opener, so it's good that he's back in the side and back as an opener.
What were you surprised with the comments after that last game, Bish, from both Dhoni and Stephen Fleming after that? Given that I've just said that they're still in it, CSK, it may seem like they've not played their best cricket, but they're still in it. It seems like the look of or the feeling from the CSK camp is, this season's beyond us.
I wouldn't say I was totally surprised, RK, to be brutally honest. I think all good things come to an end. CSK have had a fantastic run, and again, I'm not saying the run is totally over, but I can understand the sense of resignation. It's not just that they weren't winning the number of games that they're accustomed to, but it just looked to me that the personnel, that the performance was in need of a freshening up. And I don't know that playing away from Chennai, where they've been suiting their team towards for so much of their journey, that they could turn it around in the way that is still possible. I can't see it. Miracles still happen, but I wasn't surprised at the resignation.
If we are to look long-term, though, maybe this is a bit of a blessing in disguise. You knew that Shane Watson, at very best, has this IPL and maybe another one if he had a great IPL this season in him. At some point, they'd need someone else going forward. You now have Ruturaj Gaikwad, like you said, in his preferred opening position, you think. There are a couple of other guys that would want to stake a claim to be part of the CSK setup as teams plan for the next auction for the next year. This is all assuming that's part of what CSK's plans are. So maybe, like Bish said, after this great run that they've had, this is an important period too for CSK for the next few IPLs.
Absolutely. Look at it as a transition period, the next few games. Because obviously, as Bish mentioned, it is an end of an era and obviously beginning of a new one. And they have to set themselves up in the right way for the next era to start as soon as possible. Obviously, they don't have too much of a time. If you think about it, they've got another, 4-5 months before the next IPL is scheduled as of now. So, yeah, I mean, they have to start working on it now. And I think this is a good starting point for them. Looking at, even if there is no big auction before the next IPL, at least they have a fair idea as to who are the players that they want to go with in the next IPL, if possible, a few trade or auction, a smaller auction. And obviously, if there's a bigger auction, they absolutely know who all they would want to retain before that big auction. So I think it's a good starting point.
That what we know of CSK, Bish, is experienced players who know their job, and Dhoni, who just marshals them so well. Now, it's anyone's guess what Dhoni's planned for himself as a player and how long he'd like to play. But just the prospect of an MS Dhoni leading a young bunch of CSK players, lots of young Indians, that has its own little appeal in some ways. If that is something we get to see, it might just be very interesting to see how Dhoni marshals a different kind of team than he has for the last so many years.
Of course it will be, but in itself, that could lend itself to some good growth for those young players. However many of those, I don't know that you probably need to balance some young guys, as you said, with some senior and experienced guys. But if he has a look and thinks, I want to win because this is what franchise cricket is all about, but if I can also grow some guys and continue the legacy or continue with the tradition that CSK have, that's a good thing for Indian cricket if Dhoni wants to lend more of his expertise that way.
Will there be almost a relieved sense of pressure from these Indian guys, Deep? When they first got a gig, whether it was Gaikwad came in for injury for Raidu, whether it was Jagdishan, CSK was still in the competition very much, trying to fix whatever their problems were. Now it seems like it's go, have some fun, express yourself. Could this in some ways bring the best out of these Indian players as against when they first got a chance?
Listen, they're also playing for a position, not just this season, but for future as well. So obviously, maybe not from a team perspective, but from an individual perspective, they would be under pressure. They all would want to perform well and stake their claim. So yes, maybe from a team as well as from an individual perspective, there would be some kind of pressure. But they're good players. Someone like Rituraj Gaikwad, he's been a regular member of the India A. Last 2-3 years, he's been phenomenal and prolific in domestic cricket. Same with Jagdishan, he's a good wicket-keeper batsman. Going forward, if MSD is planning to hang his boots even from this format or a franchisee, they're anyways looking at a wicket-keeper batsman. So, I mean, these are really good opportunity for these youngsters. But yeah, I mean, it's not that they won't be under pressure.
Yeah, love to see what they go with when in about 15 minutes from now when they come out to bat. Because teams surprised with their opening combinations. Now that you have Gaikwad, would Sam Curran open with him? Would Faf du Plessis open with him? We'll find that out in a bit and get reactions then. But while we do discuss the youngsters, Bish, 41 years young, Imran Tahir, part of this team. We know the character that he is. Even staying out of the team, he's only been able to add to the energy of himself and that team. Chris Gale seemed like he had a real influence on a Kings 11 Punjab team that was struggling. Could Imran Tahir have some form of positive influence beyond just the bowling for CSK?
I'm going to back this out just like the bark I'm hearing in the background there. He was good in the Caribbean Premier League. So for Imran Tahir, for his personal case, he is still or has still been going strong. So we talk about CSK as a very mature team, as an aged and experienced team. Maybe some of the guys, because it's not a one-size-fits-all, maybe some of those have run their race already, but it's a great opportunity for Tahir to see whether he can still produce the magic. Because I traveled from the Caribbean for a good part of the journey with him after the CPL. And he still loves this thing. The enthusiasm that you're seeing in the Caribbean Premier League just recently from Imran Tahir and across his career is still there. So let's find out for the rest of this IPL whether he can push this into another season or another couple of seasons. Who do we have out in the Caribbean this year? I forgot his name. Pravin Tambe?
Yeah.
How old? 48, 47, yeah. 48? And he was fielding, diving around the field, making laps in practice more than guys half his age. So let's see, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing.
Yeah, and who's to say that Imran Tahir won't play that long? He seems fit. He still gets wickets. He had an excellent CPL, as Bish points out. And the other thing that we tend to miss out on Tahir Deep is he was the bubble cap holder last season, and CSK this season seems like they were short of a strike bowler, someone to count on to get wickets at any stage. Imran Tahir brings that?
Oh, definitely. I think it brings more than that. The enthusiasm. Listen, let's not. I mean, I've said this before. It's a fit man's format. It is not a young man's format. So if as long as Imran Tahir is fit, he will bring that enthusiasm. Obviously, his skill set. But I think he brings a lot more than just his leg spin and wicket taking abilities. I think the energy that he brings to the team. I mean, you see him running around on the field. I mean, and that's infectious. That is infectious. So I think Imran Tahir is such an important cog in that wheel. Unfortunately, I believe because of Suresh Raina's absence, they had to bolster the batting. And I think, unfortunately, it was Imran Tahir who got the boot there. But again, I honestly feel he brings a lot more than just his leg spin abilities. And I see, like Bish said, he's around for a while. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah, you watched a lot more of the CPL, Bish, than I did. Even in the empty stadiums in the Caribbean, was Imran Tahir still making the run all around the ground?
No, he had a different sort of expression of his success. Because the other thing to note about Imran that I found out is he's a very conscious guy. He's very world conscious, a broad world view, and I look at guys like Anil Kumble and Rahul Dravid who have a same perspective of beyond cricket. So he took the position in the CPL that he would go down on one knee and raise his fist, kind of bearing witness to what George Floyd, the gentleman who was killed in the US earlier this year, in a tribute almost to him. So that was Imran's posture after getting a wicket this season.
Wow. All right. That's something. That's something to see if Imran Tahir does carry that forward to the IPL. He is one of the most infectious personalities in the game of cricket. Very liked, Imran Tahir. We know that. But let's see how he goes on his first outing in what's been a difficult season for his franchise. On the other hand, let's talk about the Mumbai Indians. Pretty much more of the same from them. But they're without Rohit Sharma in this one. And that takes us to very interesting conversation with. We've got Ian Bishop as well on the show on Kieron Pollard, the captain. And Bish, I remember that one game he captained against Kings 11 Punjab last year, again when Rohit was injured. And you saw just he had such a big influence, at least from a distance when you looked at it. You felt like he had such a big influence on the game. It brought out a personal best in him as well with the bat. Since then, he's taken over the reins of the West Indies white ball team. And what is Kieron Pollard, the captain, for you? What do you see him as?
You talk about a big impact. He casts a big shadow over his team. When Pollard is captain, you know who is captaining that team because he does not suffer fools gladly. He almost imposes his will. In the same way he does it with the bat, he imposes his personality upon his team. It's not that he's not friendly with young guys and brings on young guys like Nicholas Puran, like Akil Hussain. He's a mentor to them. But once he crosses the line, RK and deep, it's business time. And for Mumbai Indians, he's a senior part of that squad. But I get the sense that he doesn't always maybe get as much rope as maybe one or two others if he's not performing. So to me, when I look at him, he's always felt that I have to perform every game. And I think that's what you'll see with his leadership tonight. Whether they win or not, he will want to win. He does not want to go down, but you won't see a guy taking it for granted.
Yeah, seems like someone who likes the role of leadership, doesn't he? He speaks with a great sense of clarity and maturity. When you're asking him questions as captain, doesn't shy away from any sort of criticism or question about his team. And we've seen what he's brought for the West Indies, even if not on field yet, but certainly off the field, he's brought a lot of things in order, hasn't he?
He has. I mean, the way he's led West Indies in the last year and a half, or maybe a little more than that, he's been fabulous. The team has been fabulous, and you can see that he's been able to bring everyone together in that side. And as far as MI is concerned, listen, he's been part of the leadership group for a while. This is a very well-settled side. They follow a certain philosophy that they have over a good 6-7 years. So from a leadership point of view, yes, he will impose himself. But I think the basic philosophy wouldn't change of the franchise. I think so. From a player's perspective, I don't think it'll be a huge shift in terms of Rohit the captain and Pollard the captain. So I don't think at times when there's a change in captaincy, the players have. I mean, they have a problem of adapting to the new philosophy of the new captain or kind of understanding his way of leading. But I think MI, with this settled side and settled philosophy and leadership group for so many years, I don't think they will have that kind of a problem.
Yeah, what do you foresee? We tend to think that overseas players tend to find it a challenge to captain in the IPL, which somehow I don't think that that's the case for a Kieron Pollard. What do you think he's got that makes him such a good fit even in the IPL? Whereas you look at some of the other overseas captains, and there is often, you often try and just from afar think maybe they're not quite reaching out or having that sort of impact. With Pollard, even if he captains, once in a while, you seem to see the difference.
He's been a part of the furniture. Let's be straight up. He's been there from the inception of his IPL journey. So he knows a lot of these guys. And as I mentioned before, RK, and as Deep knows as well, and you would have noticed, wherever you see him, once the game is done, you see Hardik Pandya, you see Krunal Pandya. He's built a relationship with those guys. He knows Rohit for long enough. And he commands respect. Even if he's a little bit in your face, you have to at least respect the personality. So given his journey of longevity with that team, I think he understands the culture like no other. And again, his impact when every time you walk past Krunal and Hardik, they shout out in a West Indian accent, "How you going, man? Remember the name," that sort of thing, because they feel that they're West Indian because of Pollard.
I'm going to ask you to speculate, but if Kieron Pollard was a full-time captain at any franchise, Mumbai or otherwise, good chance he'd be successful, Deep?
I think so. I think so. I think he's someone who likes responsibility. He's someone who leads from the front. But the only thing he has to be careful is with the time limit. I think, he has to remember that. I mean, at times, I think both, not just him alone, Rohit as well, takes a lot of time. So, yeah, be careful, Pollard, there.
Hold on. Wait. Didn't we have an argument on another show on this platform yesterday about more reviews for wides and for no balls and all sorts of things. Deep Dasgupta is already complaining about time.
So listen, I wasn't in favor of the reviews anyway, so I'm on your side with that, on that.
Yeah, he just wants everything hurried up. What's the problem? I mean, like we were discussing, you guys aren't you guys paid by the hour and that sort of thing.
Typical generational child.
Yeah. All right. You will. Ian Bishop's already given you a great promo for it. Run Order, hosted by Cyrus Brocha, is going to discuss whether everything should be up for review. And Deep Dasgupta was part of that really fun discussion. So watch out for that on ESPN Cricket Info. But as we just put our attention back to this one, Kieron Pollard, the captain, always tends to have a huge impression on the game. He has one decision to make, already perhaps made for the franchise. You never know what happens in the absence of Rohit Sharma and Deep. Surya Kumar Yadav has done the job in the past. You mentioned Ishan Kishan is an option. Who would you open with today?
I'd open with Ishan Kishan, because then if you open with Surya, you actually playing two people out of their position. So you're playing, then obviously somebody has to bat at 3. So Surya, who's been so successful batting at 3, he has to open. Somebody else who's been batting, and almost everyone's been in form and been successful so far. So somebody else has to come at number 3. So I think rather than moving two people out of their positions, you rather have Ishan to open and you slot Tiwari in at number 4, where he actually batted in the first 2-3 games. So that's exactly what I'd say.
Yeah, that would make it 2 left-handers at the top. Bish, do you like that? Ishan Kishan is an opening bat, or would you just put in the guy who's come in to just replace the other guy so no one else's roles are touched too much?
I've smiled before I started answering this, because if I were Kieron Pollard, I'd go up there and open the batting myself. Because he hardly ever gets to score what we call the lovely runs from early in the innings. No, he's not going to do that. But look, I don't know. I really don't know. I'm going to trust Deep on this one. I mean, I saw Ishan Kishan at the Under-19 World Cup. Different format of the game, obviously, batting high up in the innings. So if it is him, I will say what a wonderful opportunity, if it is him, to get himself in, capitalize on the power play, and then see where he can go. So let me just see, by sitting at the fence first, who does it.
Yeah, we're just going to hold on a couple of minutes to see who CSK send out to open, because I'm very curious to see whether Sam Curran continues in this role. What's best when you have Rituraj Gaikwad? I think even before I can see who's walked out, we're assuming Rituraj will play as an opener. What's best for him then? Send out the experienced Faf du Plessis or the maverick experimental Sam Curran? Deep?
I'd say open with Faf and Rituraj. I think, from a Rituraj's perspective as well, you get to play with Faf, a senior pro. He's been around for so long. I think it'll be a great educational, chance for him as well to spend time out there in the center on the job to learn from Faf. Yes, listen, Sam Curran's been all right. He's done well in that new position of his as an opener. But then that was a different scenario than when he was pushed to open. But I guess now when you have a proper opener in Rituraj Gaikwad, I'd say open with him and Faf, and then go with the same batting order.
Yeah, Faf du Plessis has walked out just as I speak, and it is with Rituraj Gaikwad. So Deep's got that absolutely spot on. Happy with that call, Bish? CSK doing the right thing, bringing the young opener and actually getting him to open this time?
No complaints here whatsoever. Deep usually gets almost everything right. It gives the guy some experience, and if you're thinking about down the road, fantastic.
He's just being nice to you because he's not sent you that invite for his party. Deep, remember?
I don't think that's coming.
Don't buy it. Right, let's wrap this up. Let's see how many CSK get and pick up this conversation with Deep Dasgupta and Ian Bishop. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your thoughts. Keep an eye out on Kieron Pollard in the field. You always tend to see him have some sort of impression when he's leading this side, and it should be fun as we see two of the most successful teams in the history of the IPL take on each other in Sharjah. Thank you for watching. Whirlpool presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Timeout, powered by Dell.